All right, let's talk about a revolution. But this one isn't happening out in the streets. It's happening in our schools, our universities, and even in the cities we live in. We're talking about the future of education and how the very idea of what it means to learn is being completely rewritten right before our very eyes. So let's just dive right in with a big provocative question. Think about it for a second. The way schools are set up right now, are they actually preparing kids for the world they're going to face? Or are they stuck teaching for a world that, frankly, doesn't really exist anymore? That question, that's what's driving this whole global movement.
And here's why. We live in a world where you can look up any fact in seconds. So the old model of just memorizing information and following a set procedure, it just doesn't cut it anymore. And that's why there's this massive, urgent push all over the world to fundamentally rethink what we learn, how we learn it, and even where it all happens.
Which brings us right into our first big idea, the education revolution. Seriously, we are at such a critical turning point. It feels like the blueprints for how we're going to educate people for generations to come are being drawn up as we speak. So, what's really fueling this fire? Well, it's a few key things. For one, the economy now demands totally different skills. It's not about what you know, but about whether you can think logically, solve tricky problems, and come up with creative solutions. Then you've got this intense global competition, especially in science and tech. And here's the kicker. We have to prepare students for jobs that literally haven't been invented yet. It's a whole new ballgame. So that leads to the most important question, right? What should we actually be teaching? If the old curriculum is like a map to a place that's already disappeared, what does the new map for learning even look like? Well, one of the biggest shifts is moving away from purely abstract formulas and getting into real-world application. Take something like mathematical modeling. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. Instead of just learning equations for the sake of it, the goal is to use math as a tool to understand a real system and maybe even predict what it's going to do next. And this example just nails it. It's not some crazy calculus problem, it's a real question you might ask yourself. To solve the hoodie problem, you have to model the situation in your head, right? You're thinking about the cost difference, but also gas, your time, the hassle. You're using math to make a smart, practical decision. That's the new focus. And this shift brings up a huge debate that's happening right now in science education. On one side, you've got the universalist approach, which is basically, here's the one set of scientific facts everyone should know. But then there's this growing movement to bring in what's called traditional ecological knowledge, or TEK. This is all about valuing local, culturally specific science, like the incredibly sophisticated farming systems indigenous communities have perfected over centuries. It really makes you ask, is science just one thing, or are there many valid ways of understanding the world? Okay, so we've talked about what we learn. Now let's shift gears and look at how we're learning, because the tools and the methods being used today are changing just as dramatically as the subjects themselves. One of the biggest new tools on the block is something called an adaptive learning system, or ALS. You can think of these as AI-powered platforms that create a totally personalized learning journey for each student. They basically have three parts: a map of the subject, a tracker that sees how you're doing, and then the AI, which acts like a guide, deciding what piece of info you need to see next to keep moving forward. But this is where things get really interesting and maybe a little complicated. This technology brings up a crucial question, and this quote from Richard Skemp just nails it. Is real learning about building a deep, connected understanding of something, like a mental map of how it all fits together? Or is it just about getting really good at following a set of instructions to get the right answer? And that right there is the big worry with these systems. If an algorithm is always telling you what to do next, do you ever figure out how to learn on your own? There's a real risk it could box students in, putting them on these predefined tracks where there's no room to explore or experiment. And maybe the biggest concern is that it can make learning a really lonely activity, taking away those crucial chances to solve problems with other people. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom for technology. On the flip side, tech is also being used in these incredibly human-focused ways. Check this out. Virtual avatar labs. Think of it like a flight simulator, but for teachers. New teachers can jump into a simulation and practice navigating really tough situations, like a tense parent-teacher conference with AI avatars. It's a safe space to fail and get better at the very human side of teaching. So we've hit the what and the how. Now let's talk about the where.
because the whole idea of a classroom is breaking out of the four walls of a school building and spilling out into the world.
For example, look at these smart city projects, like some of the ones in Turkey. Here, learning is literally being woven into the fabric of the city. You've got smart irrigation systems that become real-time lessons on managing resources, or public transit data that students can use for analysis projects. The city itself is becoming a giant living laboratory. How cool is that?
And speaking of learning happening everywhere, get a load of this number, 71%. That is the percentage of students in the US who do not have that traditional go away to a campus for 4 years college experience. It's a huge sign that education, especially higher ed, is becoming much more decentralized.
And this trend is powering another huge idea called competency-based education. The concept is actually really simple. You move on when you can prove you've mastered a skill, not just because you sat in a classroom for a certain number of hours. It's all about what you can do, not how long it took you to get there. It just opens up so many more flexible and efficient ways to learn.
So, we've talked about all these massive changes in what we learn, how we learn it, and where we learn it. But it all boils down to one final, fundamental question. What's the point of all this? What's the ultimate goal? Well, this classic framework, Bloom's taxonomy, gives us a great way to think about it. It reminds us that a real education isn't just about cramming facts into our heads. It's about developing a whole person. You've got the cognitive part, the thinking, the affective part, the feeling, our emotions and attitudes, and the psychomotor part, the doing, our physical skills. A truly great education has to hit all three. And when you pull everything together, this is really what it's all about. The goal isn't just to make better employees or better test takers. It's to cultivate humans who are truly ready for whatever the future throws at them. People who are creative, who think critically, who can work together. People who have a strong moral compass, and, there it is again, that single most important skill, the ability to learn how to learn for their entire lives.
So let's end right where we started, with a question to leave you with. If education really is the blueprint for our future, for the world we want our kids and grandkids to live in, what is it exactly that we should be building?